Hi Bessie, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today's video I'll be showing you how to cut and sew this beautiful mesh skirt. So I made use of a mesh fabric. I got it for 1,500 naira and also a lining. So let's get right into the video. So for this I use 1.5 yard of mesh and then a lycra fabric or a very stretchy fabric to serve as the line. I believe you can see how stretchy it is, so that's what we are going to be using for the line, and the mesh is also stretchy. So first thing I did is to fold my fabric into 4. So after folding it into 4, what I use in folding it into 4 is my hip measurement divided by 4, and then I added 1 inch. So that 1 inch is going to serve as the allowance. Even though the fabric is stretchy, we are still going to add our allowance so that will be on the safe side, right? Now after that I'll go ahead to measure the length of my skirt, which is 39 inches. So while measuring it, discover that I left the tape with 2 inches up. That is to say that side is going to serve as the band. Now after measuring it like so, I'll go to the down and mark what I have and then add few inches for folding or for hemming of the skirt. Then I'll measure from the waist to the hip. So from the waist to the hip I'm working with is 9 inches. So now on that 9 inches, which is the hip measurement, I put my hip measurement divided by 4. My hip is 40, dividing it by 4 is 10. I'll put 10 plus 1 inches, making it 11. Then I'll just connect it straight to the waist because we'll be adding elastic to the waist. Then for the down part, I'll just curve it pencil down so that it gives that fitting down. So for you to do that, you can just go ahead and go in by 2 to 2.5 inches to give you that fitting on your leg down to your new side. Then after that I went ahead to cut it out. Now can you see, this is what we have after cutting it out. So let's move over to the lining and cut. Now for this lining, I'll go ahead and also fold it into 4 again. So this is fold 2 and then this is fold 4. So we are going to be placing it on the floor and work with it. So after placing it on the floor, can you see what we have? Now I'll be bringing the main fabric, the mesh fabric, and then we'll place on it so that we can just trace what we just marked now. So for the length of the lining, I won't be making it that long, so I'll stop around my knee region. So I measured like 18 to 20 inches for the lining, right? So that is what I am measuring now. So you go ahead and measure yours and then you mark it. So after marking it, next thing is for you to start cutting it out. So cutting it now, you are just going to be following the trace of your chalk and then following the trace of your mesh fabric that we have just cut. I believe you all understand what I'm trying to say. So now this is me cutting it, and after cutting it, this is what we have. So let's get straight to the sewing. So for the sewing is very simple. Now you're going to be carrying the two fronts, the front and the back, and you join them together and sew with your 1 inch of allowance that you left. So you can even go ahead and not add allowance if yours is very stretchy. If you want it very tight, you get, this fabric is very stretchy. So after sewing the two side down, this is what we have. Can you see? And then I went ahead to also sew the lining separate. I used to say lining is separate, fabric is separate. Now what we have to do is we'll bring the lining and then we'll bring the main fabric. So I'll be inserting my lining inside the main fabric. Can you see what I'm doing? So make sure that the wrong side of each of these will be facing each other, then the right side will be facing outside. Also what I mean is, if you are the right side of the mesh fabric, it is the right side that will be showing, and if you are inside of the skirt, it is the good side of the lining part that will be showing. So look the way I insert it. Now after fixing it inside, we'll go to the sewing machine and then stitch the mouth so that it can stay. So can you see the way what I'm trying to do? Yes, you just pin them together. Make sure you work with your pin because these fabrics, they are very stretchy, and if you don't hold your pin to secure it, at the end of the day you may sew off line, right? You may sew off your lines. So just go ahead to your sewing machine and then you stitch it down very well, just the way you are seeing me doing like this. Now after stitching it, this is what we have, guys. So next is going to be our band. So if you know how to even fix band to fabric, you know how to fix band to clothes, you can just go ahead and fix your band, and that is all. So for this particular one, the fabric that is left, I folded it into two, and then I measured the circumference of the skirt, which is 40 inches. So I'll go ahead to divide 40 by 2, that is 20 inches, and then I'll add like half inches for joining. So that is what I'm trying to do. Now let's measure what we have. So at this point now, I'll be going to measure 20 and a half, then I'll cut, because that half now is going to serve as a joining allowance. Then I'll cut up, right? So after cutting up is for us to measure the length of the band. So the band I'll be measuring using 5 inches. That 5 inches is, when we fold it into 2, we'll be having 2.5. Then that 0.5, that's what we use and sew. So you go ahead to cut yours like this. After cutting it, this is what we have. We'll go to the sewing machine. We'll go to the sewing machine and stitch it down, right? We'll go to the sewing machine and stitch it down. So guys, after stitching it down, this is what we have. So next thing is, you have to be holding the two sides together. That is to say, we are joining them together, folding the band together, so that we'll be having our 2.5 inches in order for us to be able to attach it to our skirt. So watch what I'm doing. Now after holding it together, you're going to bring your skirt, hold it down, and then you start sewing on it. So watch what I'm doing. So this fabric is very stretchy, and some machine may not be able to sew it. So when you are sewing, you have to be very, very careful. Once you are sewing, you have to be very, very careful. So while I was sewing, I was same time drawing it, right? I was same time stretching it so that everything can work very well. Now when I get to the edge of the band, I left like half inches so that I can be able to use to pass in my elastic. So at this point, if you have a 1 inch or 1.5 inches of elastic, you can just put it inside and then stitch it around. But at this point, I don't have that, so I have just half inch of elastic. So what I'll be doing is, I'll just create a channel. I'll sew at the midpoint of the band so that there will be space up, there will be space down. So the upper space, I'll be putting a half inch of elastic. The down space, I'll be putting another elastic. That is to say, we'll be putting 2 elastic. Remember, we are using half inch of elastic, right? That is what we are going to be using. So join me as I cut the elastic. Now for the elastic, measure your waist and remove about 4 inches or 5 inches. So my waist is 30, I remove 5 inches and I have 25. So this elastic is very loose, that is why I did that. But if you have a very good original elastic, you can remove like 3 inches here, still good. So I cut out 5 inches. I removed 5 inches from my allowance, and then from my waist measurement, and then I cut it into 2. You see that I'm cutting it into 2, right? So we now have 2 of the elastic, one for the first channel we created, and then the second one for the last one. So we just put it into your safety pin and then pass it through the channel we created. So this thing is very, very simple, just like the way of passing your rope through your channel, or maybe when you are making clothes that has elastic of half inch, is just the way you do that. So after that, I'll go to the edge and then stitch the mouth together once I'm done passing it, and then I'll do same thing to the other side. So this is all we have for the band. So when you are making yours, please make sure you use black elastic or anyone that will not be showing, because I never knew this white elastic would be showing before, and again, nobody will be seeing it's my dress, right? But if I'm making for a client or yourself, you can use the color that will not be showing, right? The color that will not be showing. So initially I was supposed to be using black to this, but at the end of the day I ended up using white. But nevertheless, we still have something good to present. Now the space we use in passing our elastic, you just go ahead to stitch it down, right? You go ahead to stitch it down so that the place will not be open. After stitching it down, we are done. You just go to the end of the dress, the length of the dress, and you go ahead and hem it. That is, you go ahead to fold the length of the dress, and that is, so you are not going to fold the length of the lining again, because you don't need that. And at the end of the day, this is what I have. Will you be giving this a try? Bye.